The Quiet Mansion Before the Storm, August 15th, 1939, Bletchley, Buckinghamshire. The Victorian mansion stands silent in the morning mist, its red brick facade partially obscured by overgrown hedges and ancient oak trees. Captain Hugh Foss walks the gravel path toward the main entrance, his footsteps crunching in the early stillness. He carries a leather briefcase containing 7 intercepted German naval messages, the entire week's haul. 7 messages. That's all the government code and cipher school expects to process from this location once war breaks out. Inside the mansion's drawing room, Commander Alistair Denniston examines blueprints spread across an antique mahogany table. He's calculating space requirements. 20 code breakers, maybe 30 at most. A handful of typists. Some wireless operators. The room smells of dust and old wood polish. Denniston traces his finger along the floor plan, marking out offices in what used to be bedrooms, a signals room where the library stands. The government purchased this estate for $6,000 just months ago, and Denniston's superiors made it clear this is to be a modest operation, a backup facility in case London comes under attack. You need to understand what they were planning for. The last war, the Great War, had shown the value of intercepted communications. Room 40 at the Admiralty had broken German naval codes, reading perhaps a dozen messages per week at their busiest. That was considered a triumph of intelligence work. Denniston himself had worked in Room 40. He knew the rhythm of that war's code-breaking. Slow, methodical, patient work on a trickle of intercepts. That's what Bletchley Park was designed to handle. A trickle. The mansion's grounds spread across 58 acres, but Denniston only planned to use the main house. The sprawling lawn, the trees, the stable blocks, all of it seemed excessive for what British intelligence envisioned. A small team, a manageable workflow, dozens of messages per month, perhaps 100 if the war heated up significantly. The wireless interception stations scattered across Britain would feed their captures here to this quiet country house, where a select group of mathematicians and linguists would apply their minds to the puzzle. On that August morning, 3 weeks before Britain would declare war on Germany, Denniston couldn't possibly imagine what was coming. None of them could. The Enigma machine. That's what kept him awake at night. The Germans had been using it for years, and Polish cryptanalysts had recently shared their breakthrough methods with British intelligence. But even with Polish help, breaking Enigma was extraordinarily difficult. Each message required hours, sometimes days, of analysis. Denniston's projections assumed they might successfully decrypt a handful of Enigma messages per week. That seemed optimistic. He walks outside, lighting a cigarette as he surveys the property. The stable blocks could be converted to storage, he thinks. Maybe housing for some staff if absolutely necessary. But the bulk of the work would happen right here in the mansion's existing rooms. Compact, efficient, manageable, just like Room 40 had been. The government wasn't about to invest in massive infrastructure for code breaking. Not when the experts said dozens of messages was the realistic expectation. Denniston exhaled smoke into the morning air, watching it dissipate into the mist. In 3 weeks, Germany would invade Poland. In 3 weeks, everything would begin. The first intercepts, September 3rd, 1939. The mansion is no longer quiet. Britain declared war on Germany hours ago, and already the wireless stations are transmitting their first intercepts to Bletchley Park. Sub-Lieutenant John Herrival, fresh from Cambridge with a mathematics degree, sits at a desk in what used to be a bedroom on the 2nd floor. Before him, 3 German naval messages captured by the Y stations, the listening posts along Britain's coast. 3 messages in a single day. It's already more than expected. The messages are short bursts of letters, seemingly random. QWTPZMNJKS plort BVNQZ. Each one represents a German naval communication encrypted by the Enigma machine. Herrival's job is to assist in determining the daily key settings, the rotor positions, the ring settings, the plugboard connections. Without these, the message is impenetrable. The Polish techniques help. They developed bomber machines and shared their methods just weeks before Poland fell. But each message still requires intensive mathematical analysis. By the end of that first week of war, 15 messages had arrived at Bletchley Park. 15, not dozens, and only 3 had been successfully decrypted. The work was excruciating. Alan Turing, who arrived at the mansion in early September, spent 18-hour days working on the mathematical foundations for a British version of the Polish bomber. He occupied himself in one of the ground floor rooms, surrounded by papers covered in equations, chain-smoking as he worked through permutations. The mansion was already feeling cramped. Denniston had recruited 40 people, 10 more than initially planned, and they were crammed into converted bedrooms and the mansion's former servants' quarters. The drawing room became the naval section. The dining room housed Army and Air Force intercepts. The library was converted into a secure communications room where decoded messages would be typed up and transmitted to military commanders. But something unexpected was happening at the Y stations. The German military wasn't sending a few messages per day. They were sending dozens. U-boats in the Atlantic transmitted position reports, weather updates, sighting notifications. The Luftwaffe coordinated bombing raids over Poland with constant radio traffic. Wehrmacht commanders issued orders, requested supplies, reported casualties. By the end of September, Bletchley Park had received over 400 intercepts in less than a month. 400 messages. The staff was overwhelmed. Most couldn't be touched. There simply weren't enough analysts. Turing's work on the bomb machine was progressing, but slowly. Meanwhile, decoded messages trickled out at an agonizing pace. Perhaps 1 in 20 intercepts was successfully broken, and those took days of work. Denniston requested more staff, and the government reluctantly agreed. By October, 60 people worked at Bletchley Park, double the original estimate. The mansion couldn't hold them all. Workers spilled into the stable blocks, which were hastily converted into offices, bare wooden structures with minimal heating. These became known as huts, though they were more substantial than that name suggested. Hut 3 became the Intelligence Analysis Center. Hut 6 focused on Army and Air Force Enigma. Hut 8, where Turing spent most of his time, tackled naval enigma, the most difficult variant. The messages kept coming. November brought 600 intercepts, December 700. The initial assumption, dozens of messages, was obliterated within the first month of war, and this was just the beginning. The deluge begins May 10th, 1940. German forces launch Fall Gelb, Case Yellow, the invasion of France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. At Bletchley Park, the wireless operators in the newly constructed Hut 1 are inundated. The German military radio networks explode with activity. Commanders coordinate massive tank movements. Luftwaffe squadrons receive targeting orders. Supply chains organize fuel and ammunition deliveries. In a single 24-hour period, the Y stations intercept over 300 German military communications. 300 in one day. That's more than Denniston had projected for an entire month when he stood in that quiet mansion 9 months ago. The intercepts arrive at Bletchley via motorcycle courier, leather dispatch bags stuffed with papers covered in encoded letter groups. The registration room, a small office near the mansion's entrance, is chaos. WRNS personnel, Women's Royal Naval Service members, sort the messages by network, by frequency, by presumed origination point. Dilly Knox, one of Britain's most experienced codebreakers, works in a converted cottage on the grounds called The Cottage. He's broken some Enigma variants using pure cryptanalysis, but the flood of messages is impossible to manage with manual methods. Knox reviews perhaps 20 messages per day personally. That means over 90% of the daily intercepts never reach a cryptanalyst's desk. They're filed away, unread, potentially containing crucial intelligence that will never be accessed. The bomb machines, that's the only solution. Turing completed the first prototype in March. a massive electromechanical device standing over 7 feet tall, containing 36 rotating drums that simulate Enigma rotor positions. It's called Victory, and it's installed in Hut 1. The machine can test thousands of rotor positions in minutes, work that would take human analysts weeks. But there's only one bomb, and it frequently breaks down. Turing and engineer Harold Doc Keane work constantly on improvements. By June, after France falls, the intercept rate increases again. 400 messages per day. The staff at Bletchley has grown to nearly 400 people, matching the daily intercept count message for message, person for person. But it's not enough. Most messages still go unread. The ones that are broken, perhaps 30 or 40 per day, are often decoded too late to be actionable. A Luftwaffe raid notification decoded 3 days after the raid occurred is useless intelligence. Commander Edward Travis, Deniston's deputy, tours the grounds in early July. He sees WRNS operators working in shifts around the clock in unheated huts. He sees cryptanalysts sleeping at their desks. He sees filing cabinets overflowing with unprocessed intercepts. The system is breaking. He drafts an urgent request to Winston Churchill's office. More staff, more bombs, more space. Churchill, who visited Bletchley once and called the codebreakers the geese that laid the golden eggs but never cackled, approves immediate expansion. 8 more bombs are ordered. Construction begins on additional huts, Hut 11, Hut 16. Recruitment intensifies. Mathematicians are pulled from universities, linguists, chess champions, crossword puzzle experts, anyone who shows aptitude for patterns and logic. By August 1940, 600 people work at Bletchley Park. The quiet mansion has become a small city of code breakers. And still, the messages pour in. The Battle of Britain fills the airwaves with Luftwaffe communications. September 1940, 500 intercepts per day. The North African campaign begins in earnest. U-boat wolfpacks coordinate attacks in the Atlantic, each submarine transmitting regularly. November 1940, 600 intercepts per day. Bletchley Park was built for dozens. Now it processes hundreds, but even that won't be enough. The industrial scale of secrets, March 1941. The bomb machines are multiplying. There are now 12 operational bombs at Bletchley Park, their drums rotating constantly, electrical contacts clicking through permutations. Each machine is named after something. Victory was followed by Agnes, then Agnus Dei. The naming convention breaks down as more are built. They simply become the bombs, industrial-scale calculation engines housed in a purpose-built structure behind the huts. Flight Officer Sarah Norton operates bomb number 7 during the overnight shift. Her job requires no understanding of cryptography. She simply loads the machine according to a menu provided by the cryptanalysts. The menu specifies which rotor positions to test based on a crib, a guessed piece of plain text. Perhaps the Germans often begin messages with Wetterbericht, weather report. That crib allows the bombers to narrow the search space dramatically. Norton sets the rotors, checks the plugboard configuration, and starts the machine. It hums and clicks, testing thousands of positions. After 17 minutes, it stops, a possible solution. Norton records the rotor positions and calls them through to Hut 6, where cryptanalysts will verify whether this actually breaks the day's key. If it does, every message sent that day on that specific Enigma network can be decrypted. If not, the bomb continues searching. By mid-1941, Bletchley Park is processing an average of 1,000 intercepts per day. 1,000. The Y stations have expanded. New listening posts dot Britain's coastline, Chicksands, Beaumanoir, Flowerdown. They operate 24 hours, 3 shifts of wireless operators transcribing German radio traffic. The intercepts arrive at Bletchley via teleprinter now, no more motorcycle couriers. The messages print directly in the registration room, a constant clatter of machinery. The staff has grown to 1,200 people. New huts sprawl across what was once the mansion's lawn. Hut 3 handles intelligence analysis, taking the raw decrypts from Hut 6 and turning them into actionable military intelligence. Hut 4 does the same for naval decrypts from Hut 8. The process has become an assembly line: intercept, register, decrypt, analyze, disseminate. Each stage must happen quickly or the intelligence value degrades. Joan Clark works in Hut 8 alongside Turing, one of the few female cryptanalysts in a room full of men. She specializes in Shark, the enigma key used by U-boats operating in the Atlantic. Shark is particularly difficult because it uses a 4-rotor enigma instead of the standard 3-rotor version. This multiplies the possible key combinations by a factor of 26, making each message exponentially harder to break. In November 1941, Bletchley achieves a breakthrough. Multiple bombs working in parallel crack Shark. Suddenly, U-boat positions and attack plans are readable, often within hours of transmission. The intelligence is sent immediately to the Admiralty's submarine tracking room, where Commander Roger Wynne uses it to route convoys away from wolf packs. The impact is immediate and measurable. Merchant ship losses drop by 40% in December, but success breeds volume. As the German military expands operations across Europe, North Africa, and the Atlantic, the number of messages increases correspondingly. By the end of 1941, Bletchley Park is receiving 1,500 intercepts per day. The bombs run continuously, breaking keys for multiple Enigma networks: Red, Luftwaffe; Light Blue, Wehrmacht; Shark, U-boats; Chaffinch, German Army in Africa. The mansion itself, the original Victorian building where this all began, is now just administrative offices. The actual code-breaking happens in the sprawling complex of huts, in the Bombay facilities, in the wireless rooms. Deniston's original vision of a small, manageable operation seems almost quaint now. Dozens of messages. That estimate was off by a factor of 50. Thousands. Every day, January 1943. The war has reached its most intense phase, and Bletchley Park reflects that intensity. Over 2,000 intercepts arrive every single day. 2,000 encrypted messages that need to be sorted, prioritized, decrypted, analyzed, and disseminated to military commanders across every theater of war. The staff has expanded to 7,000 people. The Quiet Mansion and its grounds have become Britain's largest intelligence operation, a secret city that officially doesn't exist. The Bombay operation has moved to outstations. There are now 49 bombs operational, but most aren't at Bletchley anymore. They're at Wavendon, at Adstock, at Gayhurst, nearby locations where the noise and electrical demands of the machines won't overload Bletchley's infrastructure. The machines run 24 hours, operated by shifts of WRNS personnel who load menus, monitor results, and relay findings back to the cryptanalysts. Colossus. That's the newest weapon in the code-breaking arsenal. It's not for Enigma. It targets an even more complex cipher machine called Lorenz, used by German High Command for strategic communications. Colossus is the world's first programmable electronic computer built by engineer Tommy Flowers. It fills an entire room, contains 1,500 vacuum tubes, and can process 5,000 characters per second. The first Colossus becomes operational in December 1943. A second follows in June 1944, just in time for D-Day. The volume of intelligence production is staggering. Hut 3 produces approximately 300 ultra-intelligence reports per day, sent to military commanders under the tightest possible security. These reports reveal German troop movements, supply shortages, strategic intentions. They inform decisions at every level of Allied military planning. General Eisenhower later states that ultra-intelligence shortened the war in Europe by at least 2 years. But with thousands of intercepts daily, prioritization becomes critical. Not every message can be broken, even with dozens of bombes running constantly. The cryptanalysts triage ruthlessly. Naval Enigma gets highest priority because of the U-boat threat. Luftwaffe keys are next, providing tactical intelligence for bombing campaigns and defensive planning. Army keys vary in priority depending on which front is most active. The German military, unaware that Enigma is compromised, continues to trust it completely. They send thousands of messages daily because they believe those messages are secure. Every Panzer Division commander, every U-boat captain, every Luftwaffe squadron leader encrypts their communications with Enigma, confident that the British couldn't possibly be reading them. That confidence is Bletchley's greatest asset. By mid-1944, leading up to D-Day, the intercept volume peaks at 2,500 messages per day. The Germans are preparing for the Allied invasion, and their preparations are thoroughly documented in Enigma traffic. Bletchley reads it all. Where divisions are positioned, which beaches are most heavily fortified, what ammunition and fuel reserves exist. This intelligence is carefully fed to Allied planners, who use it to finalize the invasion strategy. The organization required to process 2,500 daily messages is immense. There are registry clerks who sort incoming intercepts, cryptanalysts who solve the daily keys, machine operators who run the bombs, intelligence analysts who interpret the decrypts, translators who render German plain text into English, typists who prepare reports, dispatch riders who carry those reports to military headquarters. Each person sees only their small piece of the operation. The full scope is known to perhaps a dozen senior officers. Bletchley Park was built for dozens of messages. The mansion's rooms, allocated so carefully in August 1939, were supposed to house a small team handling a modest workload. Instead, the operation grew by a factor of 100, from dozens to thousands, from a Victorian house to a sprawling complex employing 7,000 people, from a backup facility to the single most important intelligence asset in the European theatre. And through it all, absolute secrecy. The workers swore Official Secrets Act oaths and kept them for decades, the geese that laid golden eggs but never cackled.